الحمد لله رب العالمين. Getting to where we left off from last week. Okay, طيب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. To one and all watching, أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. Welcome to the shurut of Imamat in the madhab of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, and continue this week with much more of the fiqh or jurisprudence, as we've mentioned, the how to worship Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Again, working from a rather simple text, Nailul Raja, that is an expansion of Safinatun Najah of Shafi'i madhab, that is. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Wassalam على ونبينا ومولانا محمد المصطفى صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والآلة على الخير وابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا صالحا وفهما في الدين عليم يا فتاح يا عليم افتح علينا فأن قريبا يا فتاح يا عليم يا فتاح يا عليم. اللهم فقهنا في الدين يا فتاح يا عليم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا العليم الحكيم. افتح علينا قريبا يا رب العالمين واجعلنا لك من المتقربين والحمد لله رب العالمين وبسم الله الرحيم. So I need to move on a little bit quicker, I think, as opposed to last week and so on. And now that we've got our feet a little bit wet and sort of all well moisturized, we can sort of move further. Hopefully this week at a bit of a quicker pace and cover a little bit more work and so on. Inshallah ta'ala of the is I'm obviously focusing on all of the integrals and all of the essentials of in this and most appropriate for this course, obviously the questions and shoot of imama in the home, role of imama in the home في مذهب Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. A quick recap. I normally like to do a recap, and so we'll quickly whiz through that. Of last week was that the signs of reaching the age of puberty, reaching 15 years old, was dream that crossed and female at around the age of 9 years old, and the last was experiencing the haid or the menstrual cycles for a girl that is around the age of 9 years old, no time before 16 days before the age of 9 years old. Wallahu ta'ala wa rasuluhu a'lam. After that we moved over to the fara'id of wudu or furudul wudu, which was 6. Remember that the first 6 was the niyyah and the washing of the face and washing of the hands up to and including elbows. The mashu shay min al-ra's, remember, was the masah, or the just touching and applying moisture to some part of the head, any part of the head, as long as it's the head. And number 5 was the ghusl and the ankles. After it was that all of those done in Allahu wa rasuluhu. We skip a little further on to the factors that break the wudu, obviously with mild hadath asghar pertaining to wudu, and conditions are as follows. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. four and only four things actually break your wudu in its entirety. Notice that there's a major difference between a najasa and what breaks your wudu in its entirety and totality. Is that doesn't mean that something has a najasa that you might have come into contact with that it breaks your wudu. Of course, there's a difference. Something being impure up to and include clothes or even your skin or wash off as an example would not necessarily break your wudu. The only things that break your wudu are the following. أربعة الخارج من أحد السبيلين بول أو دور ريح أو غيره إلى المني. الثاني زوال العقل بنوم أو غيره إلا نوم ممكن مقعده من الأرض. الثالث number 3 الالتقاء بشرتي رجل وامرأة كبيرين أجنبيين غير حائل. الرابع number 4 مس قبل الآدمي أو حلقة دبره ببطن الراحة. Those factors that break the wudu are 4 in total. Number 1, first up is lane, that being an exit from either the front exit or the rear exit of execution. That is any exit from either the front or the back undoubtedly and completely break the wudu, except that which is semen. And why the semen doesn't break it is because the semen, the release of semen or the exiting of semen, one of the exits of the greater of the great hadath, the impurity, that is hadath akbar, and that puts what basically makes incumbent upon you the ghusl, and that's the only reason why it's mentioned that illa al-mani, except that being semen. Any and every that comes out of the exits, either the front or necessitates wudu then. So that's the first one. الثاني number 2 is العقل بنوم أو غيره إلا نوم قائد ممكن مقعدته من الأرض. So in the Arabic language here we call this an istithna, and istithna is when there is an exception. So what happens is number 2 is that the zawal al-aql, it's the losing of intuition, except this is what na, again it's an exception. The zawal al-aql, the losing of a state of consciousness, breaks the if a person has been sitting either on the floor or on a mattress or on the way it is, and they had been sitting flat sort of on that couch or flat on the surface upon which they were sitting and hadn't moved for sure. So sitting up or later finding themselves in a different position, that means they would have sort of moved, and the movement of the buttocks from where they would have been sitting on would have made a movement, and that would have obviously allowed possibility for the breaking of wind and so on and so forth. Remember and bear in mind that the person has now lost this state and not had or realized completely because the consciousness is no longer there. And thus, if the person had been sitting, its buttocks had been closed and placed firmly upon where they were sitting, and thus the sleep of that person has not broken. And the istithna and the exception within that exception is that the person in his build, meaning that the person level build, he's not too big and neither is he too thin, because the person that's too thin doesn't always necessarily have buttocks that actually sort of close up and sit completely firmly, and likewise the person that might be sort of bigger in size and so on close off properly because they can never complete it. They're not always sitting with them. So that was الثاني, number 2. الثالث, that breaks the wudu of a person, either male or female, all of these apply to obviously both male and female, is التقاء بشرتي رجل وامرأة كبيرين أجنبيين من غير حائل. The one is the meeting, the mere meeting, just the meeting. It doesn't need to be a grab or a firm grasp or deliberate meeting or anything. Any meeting, deliberate, non-deliberate, it's a grabbing of the hand from the rear of the hand, as long as there is a meeting of the skin of a male and female, and they are kabiraini ajnabiyaini, is that they are big people. Notice kabir, kabiraini, kabir, and baligh are two different things. Very important to note. Two very different things. That reach the age of puberty is taken by the urf, which is general finding within a certain area, within a certain community of what is regarded as kabir. So for a male, generally speaking, what classifies him as having reached the status of being kabir is that he has some sort of inclination the opposite sex. He has some inclination to sort of be attracted to the opposite sex, and we find generally in our societies, in Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, that in the female as her as kabira is that she has, we say al-mail fi qalbiha, al-mail fi qalbiha, and that is that she has an inclination to seeking some sort of attention, attract inclination to her. That also here is around the age of generally between 7 and 10, also found more towards 7 years old. Orphan, that is sort of in our communities and so on and so forth. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And that's what classifies someone as kabir, someone who has an inclination towards the opposite sex, and the opposite sex has opposite sex, or finding that attraction, the difference, which is versus someone that is kabir. Someone that is kabir might not necessarily have reached the age of puberty. Wallahu a'lam. So, meeting of the skins of condition that they are both kabirain, that they are both, in our societies, generally speaking, we gauge it more or less a little bit more than 7 years old. And ajnabiyaini, that is obviously they are sort of halal for each other. They are غير mahram. They are غير mahram for each other. So someone who, and so on, should there be a touching and meeting of the skins, intentionally or unintentionally, this obviously is the third factor that necessitates wudu. That, of course, there's another istithna here, and an exception here is obviously, remember we mentioned al-iltiqa'u basharatay, that meeting of two skins, and excluded from the tooth touch maybe a skin, or a tooth touch a nail, or a nail touches a nail on the fingers, or even a hair. You might be out somewhere and you might pass by, a man might pass by a lady, also happens to by mistake touch some of her hair, or something like that. Some of her hair tends to fall over his hand. Note that the wudu is not broken, because these are accepted from that. we are referring to basharatay, the two skins only. It must be a and should skin on nail is not broken. If it's a hair on skin is not broken. وهكذا. That's number 3 out of 4. Number 4 out of 4 is مس قبل الآدمي أو حلقة دبره ببطن الراحة أو بطون الأصابع. So what happens is the fourth that breaks the wudu, touching of the male organ of Bani Adam is the touching organ, or the area organ of which we said are the two exit points of excretion. This so this by بطون الأصابع. So how the fuqaha have come to, put this together in creating what the actual butun batn al-raha, which is basically the centermost part of the hands and the centermost part of the fingers, is that they had put the fingers together like that, all in line together and all with each other, and had given it a bit of a press, not too hard, a bit of a press, and whatever sticks out on the outer end, you'll notice there is a part that all of it is what is considered as the outskirts of the finger instead of the button of the finger, which is considered the outskirts of the finger instead of the center points of the fingers and the center points on the hands. So should the male organ or the rear touched by of the finger here, that's just the top there, or on the sides here, or even behind here, it does not necessitate wudu. Again, it has not broken the wudu. Likewise, maybe over on here and between the finger here and so on, broken the wudu because it was by inner parts, that being the inner part, the center points of the palm and the center points of the actual fingers themselves. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. They go through as we've mentioned, 6 points of wudu. They are the 6 furud of wudu. In order to complete the wudu at minimum, that's obviously apart from the sunan of wudu and what is mustahab in making your wudu and so on and so forth. Moving on from after going through what who is in a state of a person who has had the wudu that is broken, what is permitted and what is not permitted for. Again, this is 4 aspects that he or she permitted to partake of, and that's the author goes to say, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, مَنْ قَضَى وُضُوءُهُ حَرُمَ عَلَيْهِ أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء. 4 things have now become haram for this person. First and awwal, as-salah. الثاني, number 2, at-tawaf. Number 3, masful mushaf, and 3 is touching of the mushaf, and number 4 is the carrying of the mushaf. Carrying of the mushaf, that is the carrying and transporting of the mushaf, with obviously with this and so on. من انتقض وضوءه حرم عليه 4 أشياء. Person who are obviously very well familiar with this, inshallah. Number 2 is tawaf. Tawaf cannot be performed. Tawaf cannot be complete, cannot be performed without being in a state of purity, the purity of wudu, that is. Interestingly enough, قال سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم, our Prophet, our beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, had said in a hadith approximately that the tawaf is on the salah. The tawaf is the same as the salah. It's just like the salah, except meaning, you have maratibul adat, types of ibadat and levels of ibadat. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, except that in tawaf as salah, with the tawaf, in the performance of tawaf, you are of necessity. Should the need be, you're allowed to make talaffuz and nutq and so on and speak out of necessity, that is. And I think we take from this hadith the seriousness of the seriousness and the sacredness of the tawaf, and may Allah and situation of the ummah and the world at large, and allow us that privilege of going back to circumambulate the Kaaba al-Kareem, to circumambulate the Kaaba and make tawaf over and over again. And Allah teach us how to do it, and remain shukr for it, and do the highest sincerity. And also what we take from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to obviously never indulge in things like taking out our phones and taking pictures, and perhaps uh, it's and so on and so. It's an ibadah. It's an ibadah. You ought to, we really ought to be presence with Allah, experience the presence of Kaaba and our presence in being in the Haram, and really being there for Allah, with Allah, by Allah. And if the Prophet ﷺ had said that the tawaf is on such a level, surely being distracted in any way, be it by people or even by family, we're just there with Allah, for Allah, by Allah, to be in presence with Allah. And this is the tawaf. And what also reinforces what the Prophet ﷺ says is clearly here, there's a very high sanctity of the tawaf that you need to be in wudu in order for it to be complete and valid. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So that was number 3 being mashul mushaf. That's the touching of the mushaf. Surely you're not allowed to touch the mushaf, and you're not even allowed to carry the mushaf with you if you haven't been in a state of wudu. Okay, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi. I'll wrap up with the wudu, leaving that as that as that fun. Obviously, those are the foundations of it and so on, without going into too much of extra detail. We move over to the higher impurities, and that is the performance of ghusl to rid ourselves of the greater impurity. محمد وعلى آله قال المصنف فروض الغسل اثنان. The fard of performing the ghusl, to purify yourself from now hadath akbar or from a state of janaba. It's the same thing. Hadath akbar and janaba is the same thing. Being akbar is, and that means from what is akbar, the higher level of state of impurity, or the higher level of almost filth sins. That's just 2, and those are the furud. There are 2, of course, and mustahabbat and so on and so forth. So what happens is the 2 there is an-niyah, ibadat. The first thing, awwalul ibadat, is the niyah, performed at awwalul ibadat, because that's where the niyyah needs to sort of be done and completed. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So the first of the 2 of the furud of ghusl is second of the furud of ghusl, ta'mimul badani bil ma'i. Ta'mimul badani bil ma'i just basically means having covered all of the badan, all of the body in water, and that it must have been some running water. You'd remember from last week we mentioned what differentiates ghusl from ghusl from by the ghusl in here means the ghusl of just washing, no ghusl we're speaking as a set of ibadah in totality. But the ghusl means that this sayalanullah, it's the running of the water, versus mash is just the applying moisture. It can be sort of a touch of moisture. When ghusl of any on its own example, the ghusl of the face was running of the water over the face. So back to the actual set of ibadat, and the ibadah of purifying yourself from is the ghusl, and then that that ghusl. There are two. The first is aniyah amimul badani bil ma, covering the entire body with a washing with water. Head complete washing. Let's take a step back to the wudu that we discussed last week, and we said that there's a lihya and a beard which is kathif and khafif. You'd remember also that the beard that is khafif is the beard in which, if you were sitting a meter to a meter and a half away from someone in a majlis mukhatab, should you be enabled and color of the skin of that person through the beard, then that person has a beard khafif. That person then must make the wudu, washing of the face, with the water reaching the skin at the bottom under the beard fully and completely. And that's how they need to wash the face. The person's, the color of skin cannot be seen through the beard, meaning the beard fully covers it and does not permit you who is sitting up to be seeing that. That person is permitted to wash all of the skin on the face, including all of this here, and then just run over this with a little water, not needing to make sure that the water reaches the skin underneath the beard. Contrary to that is where we are right now, and that is the tadani bil ma. There is no exception to the person who has a lihya or a beard. Here, a beard that is kathir, a beard that is thick, is not exempted from this. But having formed the niyyah, the second and the last form is that all of the body, head to toe, including the thick beard, including thick hair, and so on and so forth, needs to be completely wet. Experience. Wallahu wa rasuluhu a'lam. So that completes the furud of the ghusl. Then we'll have a look at what it was that necessitates the ghusl. And what necessitates the ghusl was six. قال المصنف, the author had been mentioned in the next section. موجبات ستة. الأول إلى الحشف الفرج خروج المني والحيض والنفاس والولادة والموت. So he says موجبات الغسل ستة. There are six items that necessitate the ghusl. There are six experiences that necessitate now the performance of a ghusl to now purify yourself from the higher state of impurity. In other words, there are six things or items that would not put you into that state of the greater impurity, thus requiring a ghusl. أولهم, the first of them is إلاج الحشفة في الفرج, and entering of the organ into the farj. Generally speaking, the female, almost clarification, we have to clarify that when it refers to farj, it's sort of an entry point into the body, whether it's from the front or from behind the front of a female, or from behind of a male, or female, haim, and so on, of animals and other creatures. As the uppermost part, the top head part of the male organ has entered a farj, these items 100% undoubtedly then necessitates the ghusl, because this 100% undoubtedly put the male into the participation of janaba. Is as we've mentioned, the state of janaba means you're in a state of the higher impurity. So that's the uppermost part and the firstmost part of organ into any entry point of any other being or creature. Number two is khurujul mani, and this is the reminder of why we skipped mani from the wudu. Khurujul mani is the exiting of semen from the male. This necessitates also and that is obviously the menstruations or the menstrual cycles of a female. She experiences this type of a thing. It necessitates that when it stops, she perform the ghusl to come back into state of purity. Nifas, and nifas is obviously postnatal bleeding. Once the postnatal bleeding has stopped and so on, ghusl is required. Number 5 of the 6 is al-wilada, and that is the giving of birth. As soon as a woman had completed giving birth and so on, and all is done, inshallah, is that she needs to enter the state of higher impurity, and this is the performance of the ghusl. Number 6 out of 6 is wal maut, is if a person passes away. As we all know, this is obviously ma'ruf and that they would need to be that it needs a ghusl performed. Ghusl, it necessitates upon the mayyit, and these are the 6 that actually necessitate the ghusl here. So just to read the furud al-ghusl quickly, that the furud al-ghusl are it's the niyyah, it's 2. The first of the 2 is the niyyah, and the second of the 2 is the covering of the body fully, wholly and complete. Is obviously necessarily meaning that it has to be rashima. It doesn't have to come from ar-rashash. It doesn't have to be a shower. That's not what we mean by running water, but rather running over the skin, because that's obviously what classifies it as a ghusl. Your ghusl can't be made with the application of moisture, but rather the application of actual washing. Then what necessarily puts you in higher impurity are 6. The first is entrance of the uppermost or topmost part of the into an entrance part of an creature. Number 2 is exiting of semen from any participants. Number 3 is the hayd, menstruation. Number 4 is an-nifas, that is obviously, as we mentioned, postnatal bleeding. Number 5 is al-wilada, giving, and number 6 is al-maut. Of course, the mayyit is unable to be on their own, and this obviously necessitates, then makes a fard kifaya, that people ensure that the mayyit is now receives a ghusl and so on, along with all of the other furud al-kifaya, that is that the mayyit has the right to receive the kafan and be wrapped in kafan and dafan and so on and so forth. So Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa ala alihi. It seems our time has run out again. I hope we've got a little bit more this week, moving at a bit of a greater pace. Again, I'm just keeping to the integrals and the foundational principles, and and that we are in real off, and thus knowing how to rectify those states at the very basics, with regards to the very basics, on par and en route to the greater ibadat, which are the salah and salawat and so on and so forth, going up to the salah, and inshallah on the salah and Jum'ah and so on and so forth. Wallahu ta'ala alam. I think we've covered a little bit this week. I wanted to go a little bit quicker. I hope it was clear. I hope it was easy to digest. And sort of the rule of the ghusl and what necessitates the ghusl, I just like to quickly touch on these made haram upon the person who is required the ghusl, meaning the person again who is in a state of the higher impurity, what is haram for that person. So وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْجُنُبِ سِتَّةُ أَشْيَاء. There are 6 things now. The person does not have haram. And of 2 extra over what is not permitted for the person who is in a state of asghar, which is the small. In other words, the person that does not wudu is restricted by 4, and the person who does not ghusl is restricted by the same 4 with an addition of 2. And 6 in total then is وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْجُنُبِ سِتَّةُ أَشْيَاء. As-salah, which was also applicable to the one who doesn't have wudu, or doesn't have wudu. The Muslim of the Quran, also applicable to someone who doesn't have wudu. The carrying of the Quran, also applicable to the one who doesn't have wudu. Number 5, which is only applicable to the person who does not have the ghusl, which is al-lubthu fi masjid, is the remaining in the masjid, spending masjid without doubt. That is, and number 6, then taken over the 4, which are non-permissible to the person who has wudu, also specifically applicable to the person who does not have the ghusl or finds himself in a state of the higher impurity, is the recitation person who requires to be making a ghusl. Wallahu wa rasuluhu a'lam. Again, I hope that this was full and we've gone through a little bit, and I hope the detail was decent, clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make He grant us understanding of His deen and make us excellence of His deen, excellent servants for our homes in totality. I think it's very important to note that all of us who are learning together and sharing and seeking knowledge, as our beloved Sheikh and teacher Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya al-Nainawi rahimahullah had taught us that how much knowledge you have. Knowledge is always to be applied with rahmah. I think it's very important, especially at the time that we are in right now. We are sort of taking on the role of imam in our homes, looking to spend time now that we have much more time to sort of our ibadat and polish our lower ibadat en route and on path, going further up to the greater ibadat and guiding ourselves and our families, be it sons, daughters. Things need to be out and lutf and rahmah, not only because the Shaykh said so, but because his Shaykh Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam had said so. Your Shaykh and Shaykh Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam ar-rahma lil alameen. This was his approach, and this is his approach to things. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So I think it's very important that we do it in that way, and that we carry it forth in that way, and try to we can. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam.